here's our agenda for today. Introductions, which we just went through. CloseReach news. Kevin's going to give us some updates on some of the latest news from CloseReach. Then our featured presentation with Mike. And then I'll do a short demonstration on our compliance management accelerator. And then if there's any questions and answers, we'll deal with that, and that'll be it. So we'll start with Kevin.
Okay, great. Thanks very much. Welcome, everybody. So a couple of things. I think probably everybody here is aware that 10.8 was released, and then a new release of 10.8 was released, and then anyhow. So we're currently implementing 10.8. It's been installed locally at a few departments already. So we're gathering up different findings and things like that that different groups have discovered. Some are issues and some are, oh wow, I didn't know you could do this now. But there are release notes and additional information on the QualiWare Center of Excellence website. And yeah, so we expect to hear a lot more from different departments as they start to upgrade. We have a new trial repository that's been stood up for our different departments. And so the initial trial repository was mostly focused on the EA space, but it does have some of the components of our compliance management accelerator in it. But we're going to be upgrading that to pull the rest of the changes and upgrades and additional functionality that we have in our quality and compliance management accelerator into that trial repository. So for organizations that are interested in, 27001 compliance, the IT security standard, 9001 or occupational health and safety and things like that, all of those different standards are present in the accelerator, and they're going to be we're going to be moving that in the next iteration into the trial repository. And I'm not sure if everybody was who's here today was on our QualiWare user group meeting where that demo was done, but that's posted up on our YouTube channel, a demo of that trial repository and the contents in it. Is available to be looked at. Kirill did that demonstration, but we're looking at further enhancements to that trial environment so that people can give it a test drive. QualiWare, Jacob and Kuno are going to be coming to Canada. We initially had thought it might be early February, but now it's looking like it might be first week of March or thereabouts. So we still don't have definitive dates, but this morning we were talking about the week of March 6th. So there'll be more information coming out about that. And typically, we'll do roundtables or in-person meetings with some customers. So if you're interested in something like that, let us know, and we'll set that up. So this was mentioned in our QualiWare user group meeting, last one. We've set up an environment on GitHub, and it's called CloseReach-CA. And right now, we're still doing some of the configuration around that, but there's 3 repositories set up that will be running in that. One of them, and this, if people know what GitHub is, it's a code management tool. And so we intend to put any code that we develop up in that. and it will serve as a collaboration hub for different departments, creating QCL or C# or JavaScript code and things like that. And so we've set up 2 teams. It'll be organized by CloseReach team, people on the CloseReach team, and then Government of Canada teams, and then we'll identify further from there specific departments. We've set up a number of repositories, and one of them is a QualiWare macros repository. We have a number of different macros that people can choose to pull in. They're written in QCL right now, and if people want to rewrite them in C#, great. So we expect this environment to be used as people start to transition from QCL, which is going away over the next 2 major releases of QualiWare, so over the next couple of years. So there'll be a transition to C# and JavaScript, both client and server code. So we envision that GitHub will be used to share that, what people are doing in that space across different departments. GC Collab doesn't really lend itself to code and things like that. So we've taken it on ourselves to build up, to put in place this hub for developers. So automations, exports of governance workflows and things like that, that's going to be one of the repositories we want to stand up there. And our translation accelerator, which is, freely available to everybody, will be up there, and some other things. So it'll start out small, and then I think there'll be only a select group of people that are, a little more technically driven that'll be there. But Barry Acorn, the guys from ESDC, CBSA guys, the guys from ESDC, Phil and Adam from D&D, and our guys, pushing code up there. So anyhow, we'll manage this as it evolves, but I think that there is a demand for this kind of thing as well. So, and that's all I have, other than we had great cheesecake today. One of our staff got their Canadian citizenship, took the oath yesterday. So VRL is actually a Canadian citizen now, for those of you who know him. And we were celebrating a little bit, so.
And it was good.
That's all I have, Gerry.
It's too bad we don't have emojis to say yay.
Yeah.
You want to talk about the training, Kevin?
Yeah, actually, sure. So we actually are training the last month, sort of December and January. Our training load has picked up quite a bit, actually, with a number of new departments that are really jumping into it. RCMP has been a pretty heavy training user lately, and we've got these courses running. We're in the process of reviewing these in light of 10.8, and we'll be updating them as we go along over the next couple of months. So that's one thing that we are doing. They're available through Shopify, through that interface, or directly contracted. We have a contract in place, for example, with Shared Services to deliver the QualiWare training that's part of their Enterprise Architect training program for their staff. And D&D, we offer specific training around their environment, for D&D staff. So there's the public-facing courses, or those other very departmental specific courses that we can stand up. And I believe we've got a Roger Burleton course coming up as well. It's not on this list, but Roger, we ran one in the fall, and we're pushing another one up in the next month and a half or 2 months. So other than that, we anticipate that training will still be remote for the next little while, but actually at our meeting today with everybody in the office, we had cake for VRL. I was actually saying, I wonder if we'll ever get back to in-person user group meetings. So we'll see what the numbers wind up being like, in terms of the new variants and things like that. But we are looking along that path to see what we can do. Our D&D courses, we've been running hybrid. One of them, 1 month it's online, and the next month is in person. So we are getting back to face-to-face training. And our training room here is big enough to, accommodate, 12, 15 people, quite well spaced. And anyhow.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
So now we're on to our feature presentation with Mike Hart. Let me give you a brief introduction to Mike. Mike is a recognized fellow of the American Society of Quality, the ASQ. He has got an MBA specializing in total quality management, and he's also a board advisory chair for the Canadian Public Sector Excellence Network, and has developed and taught post-secondary level courses in statistics and quality management practices. He's got over 38 years of experience in quality management and organizational excellence, and he has also facilitated the implementation and assessment of ISO 9000 based quality management systems, and also integrated systems with the ISO 14000 standard, and organizational models internationally in both public and private sectors. And today he's going to be talking about using the Simple Network Promoter Score, NPS, survey to grow customer loyalty. So the presentation that Mike's going to deal with and cover, it covers the origin and understanding of what the NPS survey is and why it's so critical to use when assessing and improving upon customer satisfaction. Customer satisfaction is a vital component of ISO 9000 and other standards as well. It will also explain the meaning of detractors, passives, and promoters, and tie survey scores to increases and decreases in company sales and computer and customer loyalty. So with no further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Mike, and take it away, Mike.
So good afternoon, everybody. It's nice to be back again. Hopefully there'll be some more of those 16 people come and join us. It's never too late. Yep. So as Gerry had mentioned, today we're going to talk about, and the title of it is, using the Simple Net Promoter Score survey to grow customer loyalty. So this is really all about customer surveys and all about surveys in general. So the last time I did a presentation, I kind of at the very beginning, I said, okay, there's a lot of stuff that's going to go on, but there may be 3 things that I would like you to remember coming out of this presentation. And so I just did the same thing here. I said 3 key points to just be aware of that we're going to be talking about here. 1 is how to get customers to respond to surveys. 2 is how to get actionable customer feedback, and 3 is how to get measurable results. So those 3 things, if you walk away with some ideas on those 3, all about the subject of customer surveys, then I'll be very, very happy. So there's a little thing down on the right-hand corner that as the ISO 9001 logo, and it says helps you to meet, and if any of you are involved in the implementation of, or you're already implemented and certified or whatever, ISO 9001-2015 has a section in the standard that is called customer satisfaction. And it says the organization shall monitor customers' perception of the degree to which their needs and expectations have been fulfilled. So this is the main portion of the ISO 9001 standard that this helps to meet. Okay. So before I go on to the next slide, I'll just mention that we'll also be focusing on some different key characteristics in the history and development of the Net Promoter Score, the NPS. And the first one is Andy Taylor. We're going to bring up his name a couple of times. He is or was the CEO of Enterprise Rent-A-Car, and it's his original ideas, or let's just say, you know, we always talk about the CEO having the idea, but everybody knows that it's probably people within the organization. It's more like a group of people that comes forward with the idea, but one person gets to be the hero to the rest of the world. So it's their original ideas about a simple customer survey, sorry, and the resulting customer groups it identifies. And it sparked a shift in gathering customer feedback and the significance of customer loyalty itself. That's the first of the next three things I want you to think about, or that we're going to focus on. The second is Fred Reichheld, whose article in the Harvard Business Review in 2003 caused this original idea to be adopted by very large companies. And it's being adopted widespread through a majority of the top Fortune 500 countries in North America, around the world. And the third thing is the London School of Economics, whose research study in 2005, that's 2 years after the Harvard Business Review article, their research study linked NPS scores to changes in revenue, providing even more backing and substance to the earlier findings by Taylor and Reichheld. Okay, so really, I said there was 3 points. There are 3 points, but there's 3 more things that we're going to focus on. So before we even get into that, let's just start off with traditional surveys. I don't know how many of you are involved in doing customer surveys or surveys of any kind, but probably everybody in the audience has had a survey pressed upon them. And especially in the old days, because the NPS is becoming more prevalent, but especially in the earlier days, these surveys might have been lengthy. You might get surveys in your emails saying it's only going to take you 20 minutes to do the survey. Would you please do the survey? Well, how likely are you to do the survey? And their 20 minutes is probably 30 minutes, maybe even longer. And even if they say it's only going to take 5 minutes, it might take 15 minutes. That's a long time. And if you have no motivation to do it whatsoever, then the chances are you're not going to do it. So these traditional surveys had such things as lengthy questions, multiple questions, all sorts of different questions, but they also had predetermined questions. So in other words, they would ask you something that they wanted you to answer. And there may have been things that you wanted to say to them, but there was no place in the survey for you to be able to say that. So these lengthy, multiple, and predetermined questions usually resulted in exasperated customers, low response rates, people not doing the surveys at all, and responses to what the survey creator thought was important, not to what the survey taker thought was important. Okay. Traditional surveys usually also rated results as just a number of numbers, like means and averages, without any real significance or psychology behind them. This usually resulted in the customers being dealt with as one big group. And I think everybody can agree it's a common saying that one size doesn't fit all. So along comes the Net Promoter Score NPS survey. Like I said, it's been around. Let's say it's been around since 2003, when the Harvard Business Review article came out, and it's been gaining traction ever since. So now it's being used by most of the top tier companies around the world. Okay, so Fred Reichelt, as I mentioned before, wrote an article for the Harvard Business Review, and he aptly titled that article, "One Number You Need to Grow." This article was based on significant research by the author over a period of 2 years, and he links survey responses with actual customer behavior. After the article's release, much bigger companies, tech moguls, and global conglomerates adopted the system. So Reichelt based his Harvard Business Review article on a presentation by Andy Taylor. Remember that guy I was talking about, who was the CEO, or was, of Enterprise Rent-A-Car, to a group of chief executives from Vanguard, Chick-fil-A, State Farm, half a dozen other leading companies who had gathered at a day-long forum to swap insights that would help them further enhance their customer loyalty efforts. So even back then, this is what they were focusing on. So Taylor in his presentation said his senior team had figured out a way to measure and manage customer loyalty without the complexity of traditional customer surveys, those ones with lots of questions. Every month, they polled their customers using just 2 simple questions. One was about the quality of their rental experience, and the other was about the likelihood that they would rent from the company again. Because the process was so simple, it was fast. That allowed the company to publish ranked results for its 5,000 US branches within days, giving the offices real-time feedback on how they were doing and the opportunity for them to learn from successful peers. So the survey was different in another important way. In ranking the branches, the company counted only the customers who gave the experience the highest possible rating. That narrow focus on enthusiastic customers surprised the CEOs in the room. Their hands shot up. They said, what about the rest of Enterprise's customers? The ones who are marginally satisfied, who continue to rent from Enterprise and were necessary for its continued business. Wouldn't it be better, they asked, to track in a more sophisticated way those means or median statistics that we normally used? And Taylor said no. By concentrating solely on those most enthusiastic about their rental experience, the company could focus on a key driver of profitable growth. Customers who not only would return to rent again, but also recommend Enterprise to their friends. So this was the very, very start of it. So what was that question that he was talking about? Because remember, he said 2 questions. One was about the quality of their service, and the other one was, would they recommend their company or their brand to their friends and colleagues? So this is how the Net Promoter Score questions come up. It measures how loyal a customer is to a certain organization, the company, the brand, the location, or even with regards to a specific product or service. You can use it for just about anything. Most people use it, though, for the brand or the company name or whichever. Okay? It shows the inclination of the customer to recommend whatever you are surveying to their friends and colleagues. This specifies whether your customers are actively taking part in promoting your company's products or not. And all you need to do is ask them a question. How likely are you to recommend our organization to a friend or colleague? That's the only question. The customer responds on a scale from 0 to 10, which is divided into 3 different categories representing probable future actions by those groups. So, what do the different parts of this scale mean? There's the scale, 0 to 10, and these are the different groups. So, the promoters who give you a 9 to 10 will improve your growth through repeat business and positive word of mouth. These are the ones that become your marketing department. The passive customers that will give you a score of 7 to 8 are kind of risky, and they can go either way. They're not, they're not going to forgive you for things. They can either detract from your brand or become promoters at any time, but they're very iffy. And the last group, which is the largest group of the 0 to 10, are the detractors. They give scores of 0 to 6, and they're likely to choose your competitors. Moreover, when they leave, they're also going to spread a negative image of your brand. Taylor's car rental company, Enterprise, learned the value of the promoters. Customers who gave the highest rating to their rental experience were 3 times more likely to rent again than those who gave Enterprise even the second highest category.
So, Mike, a
Yep.
quick question. Why would they leave out the passives?
I'm going to bring that up a little bit later.
Okay.
But the reason, but just going back, let's just go back to where. Yeah, sorry, I don't have it actually in the slide, but just going back to what I was talking about in one of the earlier slides, when he was talking about this to the other CEOs, the first presentation that kind of sparked this whole thing off, that's what they asked. Why aren't you focusing on, for example, the passives, people that you can bring up? And he said, no, what they found was, and they were very successful in using it, they found they're just going to focus on that group that are the promoters, because those are the ones that are 3 times as likely to come back. Those are the ones that are going to spread the word of their company to others. And so they're not even going to waste their time with the other 2 groups. Now, what I may bring up later on when I get a chance to say it in one of the slides is that this is further proved out during research.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But it doesn't necessarily mean that I 100% agree with just focusing on this one. So that's a good question that you brought up, Gerry. And we're going to talk about it in a little bit. Okay. So we're all good about the different parts of the scale, the different groups. So what question is, what constitutes a good survey score? So first off, we have to talk about how that survey score is actually come upon. So the net promoter score equals the percent of promoters minus the percent of detractors. They don't even talk about the passives. They're just saying you either have good ones or you have more bad ones, that type of thing. So let's take a look at 2 examples. The first one's pretty easy. Suppose you had 70 promoters and 30 detractors and 0 passives. So that's 70 and 30 is 100. So it would be 70% promoters minus 30% detractors. That would give you an NPS of 70 minus 30 equals 40. So you would have an NPS number of 40. Okay. Now, let's see what happens when you bring passives into the play. Maybe you have some passives. So let's say you have 50 passives as well as that 70 promoters and the 30 detractors. So now the percentage is out of a larger number. So the total is 150 instead of 100. So your promoter percentage is 46.6%. And your detractor percentage is 20%. Remember, even though we're adding in the passives, if we get them back in the total number, we're not even talking about them in the formula to come upon the NPS score. Okay, but that means that your promoter score is 46.6%, and your detractor score is 20%. That brings your NPS number down to 26. From a 40 down to 26. Okay, the NPS has dipped significantly because you had these passives in the muck. And I'm just talking about this. This is just how the net promoter score is calculated. Okay, As far as what constitutes a good survey score, the creators of this whole metric, the NPS metric, Bain and Company, say that although an NPS score above 0 is good, so we have here good, above 20 is great, they say, and above 50 is amazing. So this particular bar says excellent for 50 and above. And they said above 80 is the top percentile. So here we have world class 75 and above. Although some different people or different groups may say it a little bit differently, they basically are very close in what they say. Everybody's very close. They say 50 is really, really good, and 75 to 80 and above is world class. It's very hard to get there. Okay. But it may also be relative. Before sitting back and feeling satisfied with your score of 50, say, look to see if there is scoring or some sort of scoring average for your industry. So let's say what I've been talking about with this example is just overall. You might find that your industry is actually benchmarking an NPS score for your competition or other like companies. And if you're going to compare yourself to anyone, it should be to a benchmark in your industry. And the numbers might be a little bit different. I can't see why they would be too much off, but they might be a little bit different. Okay. Any questions about that? That's how we calculate it. And this is what it means. Okay. So in this slide, I've just included 3 example links to websites and studies promoting the use of the Net Promoter Score. So this first one is to the 2005 study by the London School of Economics. It's entitled Advocacy Drives Growth. That's the study I was talking about earlier when I said we're going to focus on another 3 things. And this is a study that gave some depth to whether or not if you follow the NPS score and you increase your NPS, try to increase your NPS score, it actually shows that it drives revenue. For the most part, if your NPS score goes down, you should expect your revenue to go down and your market to slip. If your NPS rises, you should expect the opposite. So this is just a link to the study, and I'm going to be sending Gerry a copy of this, a PDF version copy of this slide set with clickable links. So you'll be able to go and grab that study and take a read of it, okay? The second link takes you to the web page of Bain and Company. And remember, I mentioned in the last slide that Bain and Company are the ones that came up with the NPS scoring, okay? And its relationship to growth is also well cited by others. So this site, the company that made this up, they also talk about how Net Promoter Leaders can outgrow its competitors by a factor greater than 2 times. And this site is also cited well by many other people. And the third one is the actual link. It clicks onto the Harvard Review. And this is the original article in 2003 by Fred Reichheld in the Harvard Review entitled The One Number You Need to Grow. And this is what caused the Net Promoter Score idea to be adopted widespread. Okay, so I'm just letting you know in this slide, when you do happen to get that PDF version, you can click on these links to find more information. So the next slide is how to create a Net Promoter Score survey. The first thing I just want to mention to you, again, links, okay? There are links to all of these different survey companies. These are well-known survey companies out here. The Net Promoter Score is now recognized so universally that it's been established as a template for users on many email campaign provider websites. I think everybody is probably familiar with MailChimp, definitely. The logos to the right of this slide contain links to the web pages, the actual pages providing more information on the NPS and their templates themselves. But if you had to start from scratch, keep in mind to keep it simple. Very, very simple. There is the quantitative data question. This one right here. By the scale of 1 to 10, and the question is, how likely is it that you would recommend our organization to a friend or colleague? Remember, I said this is what normally most people say. They might say company, they might say brand, they might say product, they might say service. But this is usually they're talking about the whole company. How likely is it that you would recommend our organization to a friend or colleague? And it has a scale of 1 to 10. Okay. Then there is a qualitative data question or questions, depending upon how you want to arrive upon it. This one says, what was the reason for the rating you provided above? And that's it. You're not asking them, did you like this? Did you like that? Did you like this? Did you like that? That's presuming. This allows them to pick something that is hot and heavy in their head that they just love or they just hate, and they're able to put it down here. It's the burning question or the burning comment that they want to put down. Now, you can either do it this way, or, and this is a big or, because you don't want to have a whole bunch, or you could just split it up. And by splitting it up, you might have two questions. What things do you like most about us? So that's the positive side. And what would you like us to improve? That's the negative side, hidden by a nice positive question. Okay. So the pros and cons of the Net Promoter Score survey. On the plus side, it's a simple, a short survey. It's a very easy to calculate metric. It separates the customer into predictable groups. There are business studies showing links to growth in sales or customer loyalty, links to growth or the other way around. On the negative side, it kind of needs a large number of customers to be effective, or let's say a large number of surveys at the very least. It doesn't consider the passive middle ground customer. It doesn't consider non-responsive customers or non-responsive surveys, and it focuses on the quantitative data over the qualitative data. So there are still some negative aspects to this that I found. Okay. So what do we do about that? How can we turn those cons into pros? So one of the ways is with passive customers. Rather than the traditional calculation of the Net Promoter Score, capture and trend the percentage of all three groups. The yellow passive group have already demonstrated that they can go either way. They can be a promoter or a detractor. So why not take action to see if you can't turn them into promoters? The next one is the non-responsive customers, or the surveys you don't get back. The Net Promoter Score is about as simple as it gets. And so if you don't get a response to email surveys, maybe it's time to follow up. Maybe it's time to look at some other way to capture their attention through some motivation, perhaps a possibility of a prize, or a lively focus group. Maybe you want to do it that way. Okay. The big thing is you want that qualitative data. That trend charting is great, but it just shows where you're going. It doesn't suggest how you get to where you want. Customer feedback does. What they're telling you, the qualitative part of it, the things that they don't like or the things that they really like, those are the gold nuggets. So if they tell you what they like, give them more. When they tell you what they don't like, stop giving it to them and give them more of what they like. So just reverting back to Taylor's car rental company enterprise. Remember, he said at that first presentation, no, we're just going to focus on the promoters, and that's it. But even though he said that, they didn't completely ignore the passives and detractors. When a customer reported a neutral or negative experience, marking them a potential detractor or even passive, the interviewer requested permission to immediately forward this information to the branch manager, this is Enterprise, who was trained how to apologize, identify the root cause of the problem, and resolve it. So they, even though they said we're just focusing on the promoters, they're doing more than that. And Enterprise CEO Taylor actually cited the linking of customer feedback to employee rewards as one of the most important reasons that Enterprise has continued to grow, even as the business became bigger and arguably more mature. So they actually tied performance or customer feedback to employee rewards, manager performance, that sort of thing, so that people would be very motivated in the company to have a higher NPS score. Okay. And that is the end of that. If anybody has any questions.
Not a question, Mike, but a comment. When you told me about this first, about this particular type of survey, I hadn't heard of it, but now I know I've done many of them because I know my car insurance company sends out one of these every time I have an interaction with them.
Yes.
And the fact that it's so simple to do, I always do it.
Isn't that nice? That's nice.
But I probably wouldn't if it was a 10-question survey.
Or even a 5-question survey.
Or even a 5-question survey. I probably wouldn't, right? So it's a powerful tool. If, you know, you've shown some good data there to show how it's effective and how, you know, there's been studies on how effective it is.
Yeah, and keep in mind that 2 things to keep in mind. One is that this is more effective in certain conditions, like that Enterprise rental company. Every time they had a rental, so every time they delivered a service or a product, they asked the customer. Okay? And they asked that customer who had the actual experience. In your case, so that's basically when they receive the service. In your case, you would get this survey from your insurance company when? Just once a year?
No, if ever I request something from them, so if I request some information on my insurance or whatever, and I have an interaction with one of their administrators, I would get a survey right away afterwards.
Just like this.
How did we do?
Okay, and it was very similar to this.
Very similar to this. Has a couple of questions. I'm actually pretty sure that's it, but I'd have to go back and look. But
so again, that's very similar to the Enterprise rental, where they, you know, right after the service. Now, if you don't have that, some organizations actually, if they don't have those service points, those contact points, they may do it once a year, twice a year, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Other organizations aren't that lucky. They may deal with companies as a whole. And when they deal with companies as a whole, they have to pick the people that they want to survey because there's no one person who had whatever experience with them. So they have to, there's a little bit more work to define how they're going to use the NPS.
Right. In my case, it's more, I'm more rating the transaction I had with that particular administrator as opposed to my total experience with the company. But again, probably very powerful for the company to know how their customer service people are doing.
Yeah, the thing is, if you're way up in the 9 and 10, that tells them that, yeah, you're going to, even if you have had a little bit of a bump with that service person or with that particular service, and you're still up in the 9 or 10, then you're going to forgive them several bumps you're going
Sure.
to be a real promoter.
Yeah, exactly. Makes sense.
Hi, I've got a quick question.
Yep.
Hi, since you're speaking to a bunch of GC people, Government of Canada people, and the example you have is more of a private sector one, I'm wondering how you see this, the use of this, I guess evaluating or getting surveys on our services, Canadian Government of Canada services and things like that. How do you see this being used? I mean, in the same way as the private sector,
Okay. Well, you want to be able to see it in the light of the conditions that you have in the place that you work. So, private sector, they want more revenue. What do you want in the public service sector? I mean, why do you even bother surveying a customer or a citizen, let's say, after they've taken a service, when you've got the monopoly on it?
Fewer
Is there a
lawsuits?
reason?
No, I'm just kidding.
Probably a good one. Well,
Yeah.
I will use an example, but that first question I have is something that I think a lot of public sector organizations have to ask, because a lot of them are in the monopoly position. But there are other public sector organizations that aren't in a monopoly position. Either people could go to the private sector, not usually, because there's not usually any, I don't think you're allowed much to compete with the private sector, but there are some conditions. But also, they might go somewhere else in the public sector. And so you want more funding for your organization because you're doing so well. I'll just use the example of an organization that I just had some work with over the past several years, and CloseReach also had other people working there, and that was QED, the Quality Engineering
Test Establishment.
Thank you very much, Kevin. So they have competition within, even within the Defense Department. It's a place, it's filled with laboratories and defense organizations especially, but even outside of defense in the public sector, they can bring their accident information there. There's materials they want to have tested, but they compete internally within Department of Defense, but they also compete with other laboratories that are outside of DoD. Okay, so they could use this every time they finish a project, because that's when somebody, let's say there's a plane accident or something, and they want to find out why that happened. They might send pieces of material over to QED for their laboratories to look at fatigue and stuff like that. Okay, so these things are called projects. So at the end of each project, they might go back to that customer and give them the survey. They have a lot of projects during the year, and so therefore they could have a lot of data to be able to collect and to see where they are on the scale. And if they really want to bring in more business to QED to keep their people employed, even though they're public sector, then they would want to pay attention to the number of promoters they had versus detractors.
Mm-hmm. Understood. Do you know if it's widely used across the GC?
I don't know if it's widely used across the GC.
Yeah, I really wonder if, in others, big organization like StatsCan does nothing but surveys, right? I just wonder what yeah,
Have you ever
their surveys are a little different though. They're not about satisfaction. They're more about investigative kind of surveys, I guess.
Yeah, kind of like how many people are here, demographics, that sort of thing.
Yeah,
so, yeah, they're not the same.
Yeah,
but I could see using it with a group that provides services to other areas in their department.
Yes.
When they provide those services, like every group has limited resources. So the question is, you're never going to be able to satisfy likely all of the demand. The question becomes, some of that demand you're going to have to satisfy because it's just the absolute highest priority and you cannot. But then there's all the other things, demands that come into your organization. And you look at it and you say, how am I going to allocate my limited resources to this group? And by the way, those limited resources are the people who work for me. And I want them to stay with me and be happy with the work that they're doing. So I'm going to look at the people that we're delivering services to, and the ones that are most complementary, the most helpful, the most in tune with what we do. To be honest, we're going to deliver better value, and they're going to get better value if we work with them, if we devote more resources to them. I'm not saying ignore the other ones, but it comes back to a finite number, of people and hours in the day. And where are you going to deliver those EA services or whatever to? And you've got, at some point, somebody makes a decision, we're going to work on these 5 projects and not these 3. So if you have some other way of evaluating and, providing input into that decision-making process, then, I mean, everybody knows that, bonuses are based on, how good people think you're doing your job. And the government of Canada runs its own competitions for good projects, right? Which were the best projects in our government, so they are doing evaluations right now of those different projects. This is just a way for somebody to look at who are all the different people that we have to deal with. And, we may not be able to ignore everybody, but we only have limited resources. So where could they best be spent? With the guys who are constantly going to fight against us and don't want our help? Really? Or the ones who we're going to have a great collaborative relationship and we're really going to push this stuff forward? Yeah. I think you use it for that.
Not every customer is a good customer. And it's true what Kevin is saying. You look for the motivation, and really the motivation, you look for the motivation, especially for the leaders, the director generals. What are they going to get out of it? Well, they'll get bonuses if their department is perceived to be doing very good things. They will not if it's the other way around. And kind of going along that same line, that first question that I asked at the very beginning, the private sector does it for an increase in revenue. What do public sector organizations want? Well, I think it's the same thing. The director general anyway, would probably, or the leader of the organization, would probably want their organization to be funded even more. And if they can show that there are more people coming to their department for services, then they can put that in the budget and they can actually grow.
And detractors or people who are difficult to deal with sometimes turn around when they see everybody else moving ahead in their areas because of some service that you're delivering or whatever. And it may turn that, those parts of the organization that you always have difficulty dealing with, it may turn that around because now they have no choice. How come everybody else is getting all the stuff, and moving ahead and we're not? So again, it comes back to, and everybody has limited resources. Where do we spend our time? And I mean, we face that in our own organization. We have limited resources, employees, hours in the day, consultants, that type of thing. If I have a choice between allocating resources to a customer who really wants to work with us and collaborate with us, I'm going to be more likely to do that because we're both going to benefit from it. It doesn't mean I can ignore the other ones, but it comes back to can you achieve the maximum benefit for both organizations in that situation.
So can you see using this for CloseReach, Kevin?
Yeah, quite potentially. And we actually do. We do some internal scoring ourselves, but we don't do enough external surveying. But we have done, and we'll continue to do some informal stuff. But putting something more, proactive in place like this, for sure. Why wouldn't we? If it's going to mean more business for us and better results for our customer, I mean, if I have a choice between a customer who procrastinates nonstop, who can never get their task authorizations approved on time, and then once they do happen, they expect the results instantly, or I have somebody who's planning and proactively way out in front of all of that, and we're working with them. That's why we were successful at D&D in our initial work with QualiWare. They invited us in to every single internal meeting that they had about QualiWare, so that we could really understand what their goals were and come up with ideas to help them achieve those goals. And we have some clients who still do that. But we have others who, what, yeah, I need your people now, and I don't like your rate, but you're a necessary evil.
Sounds like a passive.
So, you've got to decide, where am I going to devote my best people? It's again, you can't necessarily ignore customers, but there is a planning process that we go through, and why would I want to put my people into a meat grinder that they're not going to be happy and they're going to quit the company?
Hey, listen,
So,
Kevin,
okay.
I'm not sure sorry, I don't mean to barge in, but there's somebody who's got their hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to say that we have
Yeah,
time for one
it's-
more question. Jim Moran has a question, and then we got to move on to the
Yeah.
next topic. Hi, Jim.
Thanks, Gerry. I'll make it real quick. The possibilities of an organization in the public sector operating within their budget might be improved with this tool as well. That's what I was ever since they started using 9001 in the early 2000s. People would say, "Well, we can't increase sales because we're not a private sector," and that's when I started thinking. And I think Mike would say the same thing, that and Kevin talked about this as well, by focusing on the good stuff, and especially if you're doing something that you think is adding value to the person you're serving in the public sector, but really they find it annoying, you can stop doing the stuff that's annoying them and do more of the stuff that they really like and get all those benefits that Kevin talked about as well. So it could, and Mike mentioned too, the possibility of, if you could demonstrate that you're really serving your constituents well, it's possible you could get more money. But I think probably operating in the budget is an easier bet than getting more money, especially these days. But anyway, thanks. Great talk, Mike. Thanks very much.
Excellent. Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it. Mike, thank you. That was an excellent presentation. Certainly got some good conversation going. And so the next, and a nice segue into the next section, which will be probably about 10-15 minutes, talking about the Compliance Management Accelerator in QualiWare. And I'm just going to escape out of this screen here and go to our, so again, we like these special interest group meetings. Typically, our feature presentation talks about a topic, then we show some related information in our Compliance Management Accelerator and how we manage that type of information in our CMA. So I'm just going to start actually where Mike started when he talked about when you talked about the ISO 9001 standard and section 9.1.2, now in our compliance management accelerator, there are two different views for the ISO 9000 standard. I'm just going to show you this one first, which is the original sort of hierarchical view. And we found this was a little bit difficult to work with. So we had somebody work on putting together a landscape view, which worked a lot better and ended up looking something like this, where you can actually see the whole standard. I'm going to shrink it down a little bit so that you can see it a little bit better. But each section of the standard is outlined by these different boxes and these tags. So section 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And each tag represents a section within each chapter. So, we can go directly here right away. We can click on the link to section 9.1.2, which is called customer satisfaction. And in here, you can immediately see what the actual standard requires. So as Mike pointed out, the organization shall monitor customer perceptions to the degree to which their needs and expectations have been fulfilled. It doesn't specifically require a survey, but it does say in the note that examples of monitoring customer perceptions can include customer surveys, customer feedback on delivered products and services. Typically, I would say this is, in most companies, this is fulfilled by a survey or some kind of means of getting the customer to give you feedback on how they perceive you're actually doing as a business. And you can see here there's some links in this description to some of our business objects, and we have a business object here called Manage Customer Feedback, which if I open that link, it brings me here to a workflow diagram called Customer Satisfaction. And this is a workflow diagram that we built ourselves that outlines how we manage our customer satisfaction data. So let me get rid of this. Okay. And so this is just a simple workflow diagram, and one of the things that we try to do in our compliance management accelerator is keep things as simple as possible. Most companies in the traditional management of their quality management system, created documents of 10, 20, 40 pages that nobody ever read. And we try to make it as simple as possible, because the standard doesn't ask you to create any documentation. It just asks you to create documents that are necessary for you to have an effective system. So in this case, we built a fairly simple diagram to show how we manage our customer satisfaction data. And within each of these blocks, if you click on them, it gives you a very simple description, or in some cases, a requirement as to what to do, right? So, you're going to review the data with the team. You're going to collect your data, relevant customer satisfaction data from various sources, such as surveys, feedback, corrective actions, etc. And then you're going to manage your data and manage the performance data against, and we have a quality objective. So you can see here that we have a quality objective within our quality management system that requires us to have a certain level of customer satisfaction, and that quality objective is connected here. So if I open that, then it'll tell you here 90% of customers rank CloseReach as meets or exceeds expectations. So this is the quality objective that supports our customer satisfaction data. And if I scroll down here, you can see several links, and very often they're to people who are involved in managing or being informed about this data. But this link here is to the actual goal. And then there's a further link here that goes to our KPI. To our quality scorecard. And this is where, if I click on that data link, it brings us to the quality scorecard where it shows where our objective is being measured and how we're ranking against that data. So again, that, the flow all the way down from the standard, all the way down to the actual data being measured in just a few clicks of, and also showing you how the workflow diagram works and how to actually perform the task is very simple and very easy to do within our compliance management accelerator.
And I notice you have organizational KPIs on that list
Yeah.
of, I guess these are charts that you have, right?
So these are all of these KPIs are key performance indicators within the organization. Our next step, Mike, and you kind of jumped ahead of our of where we're at with building this, because the compliance management accelerator. No, that's fine. That's a good question. When I say you've kind of jumped ahead, I mean that you're thinking in the same way as we are. And Kevin and I had this conversation, actually, I think it was probably on Monday, that the next step is, and there is data behind all of these, and there's an actual KPI spreadsheet here that is behind all of this data. But our next step is to actually to build that data out so that we can build everything in QualiWare, as opposed to some of this data is managed externally and then we pull it into QualiWare. Our next step is to figure out how to do it within QualiWare, and that's the next step, and then we can see historical data and everything else within the tool. So the tool is evolving all the time, and that is one of the next steps that we're getting to. Anybody
do you have
Yeah.
a dashboard view of these things?
Do I have this is a dashboard view from the point of view of this is our scorecard. Are you looking for a view of
charts, trend charts?
That was what I was saying. We have that externally.
Oh, okay.
And we pull it into QualiWare. Right?
But you can see trends right here, Mike. You can see, the direction of the arrow.
Yeah.
What's improving, what's stationary. Right. That's giving. I mean, we could put a speedometer on it rather than a simple black arrow. Or, there's a number of different ways to display these, but, the dot and the trend lines, are providing us with some, the arrows provide the trend.
Mm-hmm.
Are we improving? Are we staying consistent? Do we maybe have an issue that we should be looking at? And that's the purpose of the arrows.
Just FYI, this is fictitious data, just so that, because, we're not showing our real data here, but we also do have, I think here, and this is for future work, for a detailed analysis of the data, click on here, right? And that will lead you to the graphs, but like I said, we're in development of that particular feature.
Well, that would be great.
Yeah, that's part of what we're working towards. Anybody have any questions on this so far? Okay, so I'm going to quickly just change track here for a little bit. I want to just show you briefly our own homepage and how we manage our quality management system. Just a few features as to how we do this, because as anybody who's familiar with ISO 9000 is aware, there are certain requirements in ISO 9000 that have to be met, and some things that have to be documented. There are no documents per se, but there are things that have to be documented, like the quality policy, the scope of the quality management system, and the quality objectives. There's a requirement that they're all documented. There is no quality manual per se. That was we got rid of that, or ISO got rid of that in the 2015 version, and there's no requirement now for a quality manual. And when I started building the quality management system and I've always been used to quality manuals, and again, they're a big, thick document that Kevin will tell you he had 2 binders that covered a quality manual at one point. And when I started building this for CloseReach, Jim Moran, who's on the line here, also took a lot of pains to kind of to steer me away from building a quality manual. And then then the light went on. This is it. This is the quality manual, right? Basically, this tells you just about everything you need to know about the quality management system, with clickable links to get to just about anything you wanted to get to in the quality management system. So like I mentioned, the quality policy, the scope, the interested parties, and the quality objectives are some of the top level things that are top level requirements that are in the first couple of paragraphs of the standard in section 4 to 6 of the standard. And then there's also a requirement in section 4.4.1 that says that you will have you'll define your processes and the interactions between them, and then so we created a top level processes diagram that outlines how our processes all interact together and are linked together, and you can see that the under each section, and in this section, for example, section 6.1 to 6.3, you can see that the quality objectives are part of that, and they're all linked here. Same with the quality policy. The quality policy is linked into the leadership section here in sections 5.1 to 3, and so on and so forth as you work your way down. And if we want to go back down to that level of the customer satisfaction, we have a customer success, what we call a strategy model here, with the outlined different business objectives of the customer success team, and any little box you see like this means that there's an underlying workflow that deals with that particular topic. And here again, we're back to customer satisfaction, another way to get there, and you're back to the same diagram again that we looked at earlier on. And just one more feature that I wanted to mention was this process framework, which is actually an Archimate diagram that we built to make it easy for employees to find a process, depending on which department you want to look for your processes in. So just for example, the quality management system, if we want to look under that organization. Oh, that one isn't published. Sorry, I'm sorry. Not sure why that is. So we look under finance. So under finance, we have several different sections under finance that have that break out into lower level processes. The different colorings mean that the ones in light purple are approved. The ones in the yellow have been developed but have not been approved yet, and then the ones in red, we have not developed them yet. So this is a project that's a work in process, but it's just an easy way to get to the processes, no matter which department you're looking for, because very often that is something that people struggle with, especially when it comes to audits from an external auditor. The auditor asks them where's the process that they're looking for and that they're dealing with in their job, and they struggle to find it. So we've made it easy for people to do that through this process framework. We also have a really good search engine on here, which you can search either through compliance, processes, regulations, or documents, depending on what you're looking for. So that's everything I have. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Okay, so once again, I want to thank Mike for an excellent presentation. I appreciate it, Mike, and thank you everybody else for your participation and for joining us today. And our next meeting will be March 15th, so that's 2 months from now. And hopefully we'll have better weather by then, and we'll be out of this freezing rain and slush that we're in right now. So, okay, so everybody have a good evening. Thanks very much. And we'll
And
see you
thanks
all
for
soon.
having me, Jerry.
Yes,
Happy
thank you, Mike. Appreciate
Happy
it.
Valentine's.
Happy
That's right.
Valentine's. Okay.
Next time we talk.
All right. Bye-bye, everybody.
Good night, everyone.